Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Conquer the Clutter for May the 8th. I hope everybody's having a great week so far, and I hope that the material today helps you improve the rest of the week and weeks to come. I'm going to invite you to consider that you could actually be your own cognitive behavioral therapist for yourself, all right? And today I'm going to spend a fair amount of our time filling you in on a key technique that is a really important tool in CBT, whether you do it yourself or somebody else supports you. All right. And that important tool is known as the ABC form. Now, if you're not particularly motivated to walk around with you know, one of these at a form and make it into an ABC form, then I'm going to give you some alternatives, all right, so that it can just be part of your day. The reason the ABC form is really important is that it asks you to be aware in a behavioral way to identify the questions that are coming to mind when you are having an experience in an event, whether it's positive or negative. And when the thoughts that automatically come to mind are actually old thoughts, old habits, old patterns, and they haven't been terribly helpful in the past, it gives you the opportunity to be present in the moment, all right, and replace those unhelpful thoughts and record them for the future. That's important because when you record an unhelpful thought that reared its ugly head as a result of an event, all right, and it's not working for you, in the context of experiencing that current event, when you record it, and it doesn't have to be detailed, all right, use your own short forms. What it does is it gives you an opportunity to validate yourself, all right? And for future reference, you can go back and there's no denying, no forgetting, no fuzzying how you were thinking or feeling. It gives you a future reference of patterns that are not working for you. And when you give yourself that little bit of increased insight, all right, it also gives you the opportunity to reflect on how did that happen? What caused it? And do I like where I ended up? And how many more times do I want to end up there? All right, because we are creatures of habit. All right, even when things don't work for us, it's amazing how we repeat them. So if you invest a little bit of time and a little bit of effort, it can help you to identify and replace automatic negative thoughts. All right. And don't think you don't have them. We all have them. You have them. I have them. Everybody has them. All right. All right. And then it also allows you to record how and why those automatic negative thoughts actually were. Last week, we used the term problematic thinking styles. All right. But let's tell the truth. If they're not working for you, do they not qualify as dysfunctional? Right? How many people want to waste the rest of today, tomorrow, and future days in a dysfunctional state of mind with dysfunctional consequences? Anybody here putting their hand up? I don't think so. Okay. And just that little bit of effort, that little bit of time can help you record those dysfunctional, automatic negative thoughts because they are the fuel about how your thinking impacts your feelings. And don't kid yourself. Do you remember the bubble exercise, the bubble handout, where there's an event, there's a reaction, there's a feeling, and you better get handles on it at the feeling level, because the impact of our feelings pretty much decide a narrow range of the actions and consequences the actions we're going to take, and therefore the consequences we're going to experience. All right. Because the way we think affects the way we feel. Repeat after me. The way we think affects the way we feel. So changing those unhelpful thoughts is vital, all right? So that you can act differently in future, right? Now, the first step is to fill out 3 columns. Now, you can make it into a form, but I'm going to invite you. I particularly like this little book. It says, "Not all those who wander are lost." Okay. And you can do something as simple as, you can even get a smaller notebook. Yeah. Okay. All right. See, just wing it. It doesn't have to be a formal form. You don't have to buy a book. Get yourself a little notebook. Put the date at the top, because you want to reflect later on what else was happening that day. All of this, when you work backwards, all right, from consequence, feeling, automatic negative thought or thought, trigger, that's often what it is. You're going to see the patterns, all right, of what is a trigger for you. And when you can do that, you can see it coming, all right? It's worth, try it for a day. Just try it for a day, all right? So using that ABC form, all right, the first step is to fill out the 3 columns. Now, the first column, the title of that first column, the fancy word is activating event. That's just a $5 term for trigger, all right? The second column is beliefs and thoughts. Our thoughts and our beliefs, funny how they can become interchangeable, and often are. And when they're automatically negative, because we have a genetic predisposition to negative bias, all right, don't specialize in negativity. Don't stay on the defensive. That third column is consequences, all right? And so focus on catching your automatic negative thoughts in order to see the connection between those thoughts, sometimes triggers, and your feelings. When you can get that connection clear in your mind, it gives you more options for choice. Now, again, if the standard ABC form, and you can probably buy a workbook on Amazon if you really wanted to, but you can create it for yourself with just a little notebook, all right? It's important that it's portable, because you want to do it in the moment. You don't want to be trying to remember, all right? Note your thoughts and feelings, and then take a step back, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, how are the thoughts and feelings linked? How often does that thought link with a particular feeling? And is that feeling or that thought an automatic negative one? All right. And that's going to help you clear the fog, clear the confusion, all right, and see clearly for yourself your unique personal connection between what goes through your mind, resulting in how you feel. Okay. Seeing that connection is going to help you make sense of why you need to challenge and change your thoughts. When you record them, even just for a day, you will see connections that were very hazy if present at all. And that really is a deep dive into your personal way of processing. All right. And the way you uniquely, it's different for each person, believe me. All right. Based on our history, based on our fears, based on our desires, based on our vulnerabilities, based on our goals. Everybody has a different pattern. Okay. Remember this. Those automatic negative thoughts or any other thought, okay, they aren't facts. Write this down. Thoughts aren't facts. They're just observations. They're just the way your mind processes. Okay, and they are impacted by the context that you're in. Feelings aren't facts either. They're just the way you make sense of a situation. And they are often unique to you. When you go to the trouble of writing down your thoughts, it gives you the chance to realize that this is just a theory. The thoughts and the feelings are just a theory. All right. They're not facts. They're not even necessarily reality. They're just an idea. They're just an idea that you form in your own unique way. It isn't an absolute, none of them are absolute facts of life. Here's the thing we need to really keep a hold on now. Some of us hold on to this, the inverse of this very strongly. If we think it and we feel it, it must be. No, they're not even necessarily true. Okay. When you check them out against evidence, they're not even necessarily true. They are chemical reactions and processes in the moment. And we form habits. We form shortcuts. The more negative the meaning you give an event. Now, this is not to lie to yourself or Pollyanna. Okay, nobody's wanting you to become a Pollyanna. Okay, the more negative the meaning you give an event, before you assign a negative meaning, stay in neutral. The evidence will prove what this turns out to be. Right now, I'm staying in neutral. I am observing. I am observing the event, the context, and I am observing my response and my reaction to it. Because the more negative the meaning you give an event, the more negative you will feel. You just gave away the farm. All right? Because how you feel and the hormonal chemical response within your body to your brain is going to most likely dictate how you'll act. All the more reason to practice staying on neutral just for a short while and observing three things: the event, the context of the event, and your response to the event. All right. The more likely you will act in a way that maintains whatever feeling you settle for, right? When you feel negative, you're more likely to generate more automatic negative thoughts. This is sounding a little, I hope by now, like a runaway train. Do you get it? All right. That being able to put yourself on pause is so important. Because the more likely you are to generate negative thoughts automatically, the more likely you are to get caught in a vicious cycle. So don't let your automatic negative thoughts rule the roost. Today, just devote today to practicing taking a step back and staying or finding your neutral position where you give yourself time to observe the reality that is unfolding. When you go to automatic negative thoughts and the reactions, the feelings and reactions and consequences accordingly, you've already left the room. All right. You're not still in the event and you have very little power to back up. That's like trying to back up a train. All right. So stay in neutral, practice staying in neutral. Now, the consequence column is the third one. Write down the emotions you're feeling. You'll realize here I did not say the emotions you felt. Write it down just today. Devote today to this exercise. Emotions you are in the process of feeling. And help yourself find, because you've got consequence now, take a step back, help yourself find a healthier emotional response. And I respectfully suggest neutral. I'm not deciding. I'm just letting that go. I'm letting it go. If it's fact, it will be proven to be fact. If it's not fact, I don't want to commit to that. All right? Help yourself find a healthy emotional response that is more helpful and productive to you. Now, when you record or just take notes of the consequence of thought, feeling, consequence, all right? You know how you're going to know where you actually want to practice being? It's when the consequence turned out you made it by not committing to an intersection where there was going to be a major collision. All right. That consequence is actually going to be helpful to you. It's also going to be either productive in itself, or it's going to be the foundation pieces for something that is a whole lot more productive to the goal you intended, to the consequence you wanted. Emotions and behaviors are consequences, right? They're consequences of that interaction between the trigger and what you personally added to it in the way of your belief or the meaning you applied to something or an event. All right? Okay. Now, the following list of emotions, if anybody's out there thinking, oh, gee, I don't think this really applies to me, let's do a little test. Okay. The following list of emotions are common to positive interventions by CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. And you don't have to be an expert. You can start small and learn from there. Now, if anybody out there is feeling any of these emotions, particularly if any of these emotions tend to crop up automatically or more frequently than is productive for you, you can use, I respectfully suggest that you put a little bit of effort, because you can use CBT to corral them and to take back control. Okay. Anybody here experiencing anger? What about yesterday, the day before that? How often is anger where you go to? Anger can be very useful. It's a mobilizing emotion. It also pretty much dictates, however, a negative meaning that you've applied to something, which may or may not be helpful and productive for you. Is there anybody out there who's feeling or feels anxiety way too often? Depression. How about envy? The other guy's situation, what they have, how they do, always seems better. All right. Guilt. Is anybody out there major in guilt? How about hurt or being offended? I'm not talking physical pain. I'm talking just feelings get hurt. Jealousy? How about shame? Anybody out there, when something happens, all right? When something happens, this is so funny. Apparently the subtitles are all going to be in Arabic. Who knew? All right. I don't know how Zoom decides that the subtitles should be in Arabic or anything else. How about shame? I hear a lot of people say that they shame themselves. Sadness? Okay. Try writing them down, right? The consequence you experienced. What was the consequence you experienced when you felt those emotions? And do they come to you almost first, like almost habitually? Are they the first arrivals? All right. Then write down, even if those are the emotions that you experience more often than not, write down how you acted when you felt that way. All right. Now, when you have an opportunity, you invest this little bit of time today to track those 3 columns: the trigger, the feeling, the consequence. At the end of the day, write down how, if at all, your behavior changed. Now, that doesn't mean you went from negative to positive. Maybe it means you went from negative-ish to, I'm not going to commit right now. You just saved yourself a load of agony. All right. And unproductiveness. Because any one of those emotions doesn't make you feel good about yourself or what you're doing or what your options are. So be really, really careful before you let them sneak up on you. All right. When you felt the uncomfortable emotion prompted by what is probably an automatic negative thought, did you avoid doing something? That's a good thing, perhaps. Now, if you put yourself on pause and you observe the more reality about the situation that you're looking at, avoiding making a mistake or avoiding committing to negativity unnecessarily is a good thing. But it also means that you allowed more options to slide by in front of you in your mind, and maybe you avoided picking the wrong one. Maybe you gave yourself the opportunity to do a trial run on something that was coming later on in the thinking process. All right. Becoming withdrawn. Going on pause is not becoming withdrawn. Going on pause is not isolating yourself. It is not opting for inactivity. All right. It is simply a way to make sure that you have more of the facts as they relate to where you want to be. All right. Now, here are some of the consequences that happen when people allow themselves to be fast forwarded by automatic negative thoughts. All right. So here are some consequences that you're such great people and we are a community. I don't want to see you wasting your time engaging in. All right. Some of the consequences are to feel aggressive, to get angry. But when you turn it in on yourself, is there anybody here who comfort eats? Is there anybody here who restricts food intake because they don't feel good about themselves? Now, I'm not talking about healthy food intake. I'm talking about punishing yourself. Okay. Is there anyone here who looks to escape from a situation. Like just go, Netflix is a good way to do that. All right. All right. So are a lot of other things. Is there anybody here who puts something off? It's called procrastination. Okay. How about seeking reassurance? I can't move forward until I get reassurance from somebody I am giving more authority to. Nobody can see the facts in your life better than you can. So don't offload that responsibility and that right. Is there anybody here who copes through alcohol, drugs, or some other mind-altering substance? All right, that's disappearing. That's avoidance. Even if, and in Canada, some of those substances are legal, doesn't mean they're a good idea. All right. When you've got something that you need to resolve, mind altering is never a good idea. Take a rest, take good care of yourself, and then commit to the best consequence that you are capable of developing at that point in time. You can always move forward from there, but escape is not where you want to go. Okay. We do talk about hoarding. All right. We do talk about clutter. So one of the other ways to escape and avoid is to use safety behaviors, such as holding on to something. That's what happens when we build up piles. All right. If you feel badly, all right, does the likelihood increase that you will hold on to something? And how productive is that for you? Which is not to say that you need to make a decision in the moment, but it does mean that that thing is occupying space that it doesn't actually warrant. All right. And the more you do that, the more you give your peace of mind to things that are never going to pay you back. So look around you at those piles. Okay. So in the activating event column, all right, write down what triggered your feelings. What triggered it? We all have our own little special brand of triggers. All right, what are yours? What are some of the ones that you're not really that aware of? They come, they go, and you don't really give them consequence. If you devote a little bit of time today to those 3 columns, you will know yourself a lot better. It's worth one day, a me day. All right, so write down what triggered your feelings. Now, what are the things that trigger your unhelpful? Now you, in that consequence column, all right, once you can reflect on that, because you've got it written down, you can go back with a clearer mind after the event or the next day and say, is there a pattern here? When I had an unhelpful consequence, was there any common thread in the triggers? It may not have been exactly the same thing that triggered you, but is there a common thread? And what does that common thread say? If I had to put a label on it, what would I say? Self-esteem, confidence, loneliness, insecurity, codependence. All right. We've had a few. Sorry, my nose is running. It's spring. What can I tell you? All right. What are the things that trigger your unhelpful thoughts and feelings, resulting in an unhelpful consequence, a non-productive consequence? Activating events and or triggers can include something that's happening right now in the moment. Can, all right? But it's funny how sometimes the event in the moment harkens back to something that actually more poignantly happened in the past. And so we're still reacting to it. Unresolved grief, all right, is a hugely unproductive and damaging trigger, all right? So the thing that's triggering you doesn't have to be just now. There is an event that's triggering you right now, yes, or a feeling that's triggering you, absolutely. But are there some common threads there that you want to follow back? All right. Now, can also be fear, right? That feeling, consequence, trigger, all right, can be about something that you're anticipating will happen in the future. So it can be present, past, or future. Quite often, if you look at the precipitating event right now that you're looking at, there will be some hints in that event. Something that is like or has commonality with the past and the future, right? Okay. Usually it's something in the external world, like an object, okay? A place, a person, a reaction, something, the meaning. Watch the meaning you apply to things. It's really good to go on neutral before you decide what the meaning of something is. Get some evidence first, all right? Moods that you're in. If you happen to be somebody whose mood shifts involuntarily, all right? What you hold in your mind as the meaning can be the thing that determines the consequence. Sometimes it's an image or a memory. Have you ever had an experience where a memory completely shortcut your mood or your thoughts, and suddenly you were mentally somewhere else in this little vacuum space in the middle of your normal day? Have you ever had that happen? All right. Sometimes it's a physical sensation. Our body, our mind, our spirit are always trying to work for us. We need to cooperate by thinking long and hard before we commit to what the meaning of something is, because the meaning we give it will almost certainly, if not determine what happens, the options we allow ourselves to consider, and the consequence we have to live with. Okay. What is the reaction? What is the trigger? What is the feeling when your heart starts to race? Hmm? Is that just a benign event? You see, it can be a physical reaction, right? It can be a headache. A headache isn't always, but it can be a consequence of piling on stress after stress after stress after stress and not dealing with it. Important to look at, important to have assessed. Headaches can also have other more serious consequences, or sometimes benign. But if they become a pattern, follow that pattern and find out what it means for you. How many people here, just when things aren't going particularly well and you're more susceptible to automatic negative thoughts, just feel tired, like somebody's let the steam out of them? That happens to me. All right. Yeah. And that's when I want to get the handles on any automatic negative thoughts or meaning I'm assigning to something, because they are no more true. We all have to fight with this. Just because I do this podcast with you doesn't mean I'm superhuman and I don't have these things happen with me. What I try to do is I always try to have a set of handles that I can put on something and say, whoa, before you commit to the intersection, figure out what this is as best you can. All right? Because you don't want to end up paying a price you don't want to have to pay. Feeling your own emotion or behavior uses your feelings. All right? And the feelings contribute. I wouldn't say that they commit you to think an event is important, not necessarily, but they heavily influence. All right. And remember, feelings aren't facts. Feelings are just the meaning you're applying to it, a consequence of the meaning you're applying to it. Can you see how we're going around in this cycle? All right. But when we use our feelings to decide what we think and we allow ourselves automatic negative thoughts, we're giving negative importance to something when it may not actually be. Sometimes it's just what it is. All right. So that's why I'm trying to convince you that if even just today you use your feelings as the guide when you log them, all right, now in the belief column, all right, write down your thoughts, because beliefs are sort of that moral, value loaded part of us. Write down your thoughts. You believe this to be true based on what thoughts? And don't forget your mood at the time. It reflects and influences your attitude. Are you feeling negative? Are you feeling positive? Are you feeling neutral? What is your attitude? All right. And are there any beliefs that you are holding firm, like shoulds? Remember, we talked about problematic thinking styles? Shoulds, musts, ought to, have tos are not helpful. Okay. And under that belief column, write down what the event, that precipitating event, what it meant to you. Don't speak for anybody else. What did it mean to you? All right. And when you felt the emotion, the feeling, can you see the pattern of thoughts, attitudes, and beliefs that came as a result or that were fueled by that feeling? Okay. Here's the question. All right. These aren't just one-offs generally. All right. If you take the time to log these, just even in short form, you're going to figure out how often they pop up. Because it's amazing how we just pack that up and put it away. We don't really remain aware of patterns. We're so caught up in the moment. But if you take the time today to do this, you'll get a hint on how often these often automatic negative thoughts pop up. Okay. Do they pop up to the point where they are almost automatic? Do they pop up? And as they become more of a habit, do they also become more validated, somehow more worthy of considering them the truth? And does that give them a power that they don't deserve? The feelings, the thoughts, the beliefs. Have they become too dominant, too extreme? Because the likelihood that this event and what we need to do about it, how we need to handle it, how we need to process it, is so similar to the pattern of our behavior, that sort of formula we apply, we apply, we apply. Very low probability that this event holds a lot in common with that event. Be careful you're not warping what you're seeing by the meaning you're applying to it, because you're not aware of your feelings. You feel them, but then they're gone. And what beliefs we're loading them, all right? What triggers are just waiting up here to set you off again on a false path, on an unproductive path? If anybody out here today feels stuck, please go back and listen to this podcast, all right? Because this ABC column thing is a handy dandy little tool to you getting a handle on it. Okay. The more we do that, not following up on our triggers, thoughts, feelings, beliefs, consequences, the more distorted our perception becomes. And the more unhelpful the automatic thoughts we consider become, because they haven't been checked out against today's reality. And also, today, you learned things yesterday that you're not even aware of. All right. Today, you are a more capable person. You know more than you knew yesterday. You have more to bring to the table as far as developing options that will guide you to productive and helpful. Please don't let automatic negative thoughts, all right, feel like facts. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of your energy and a waste of your life. Okay. Do you ever say, anybody here, is this kind of triggering anything, tweaking anything? Is anybody out there saying to themselves, here I go again? You ever find yourself just starting down a behavioral path, a reaction path? You say, whoa, whoa, I didn't like this thought. Whoa, 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 whoa. All right, here I go again. Has anybody, it's far more likely that you get to the other end of it. You're paying the consequences. It's too late to back up. And you're saying to yourself then, anybody out there here saying, oh, Lord, I'm here again, and I didn't like it the last time. This is not working. Okay, it's not a mystery. Haul out your handy dandy little 3-column booklet, all right, and start tracking it. It's not a mystery, and you can find the answers. You are capable of that. Be curious, all right? Anybody out there has done this long enough, often enough, that they have a little part of themselves that says, you know what? You're not as good as other people. You're not as effective and competent. You're not as, you're not, maybe you're not quite normal. Anybody out there? You're as normal as apple pie. All right. You're as normal as apple pie, people. You just don't have the answers you're looking for because you're not deliberately looking for them. This is undoable. You can backtrack. You can do it. This is not rocket science. You don't need a master's degree. You don't need to be a psychologist. You don't even need to have a therapist. You can figure this out for yourself. All right. I'm going to give you, I wonder if I have that book. I don't have it handy. I will have it handy for next week when we work on the next part of this. And we're going to look at next week regret and guilt and how to CBT yourself about that. All right. Okay. So just instead of talking yourself into self-defeating attitudes or not being respectful of where you are today and how hard you fought to get there, All right. And if you're coming to this podcast, that's you. You qualify, even if you haven't finished the finish line, crossed the finish line rather. Okay. Just think of yourself instead of those negative thoughts as somebody who is investigating what thoughts they have. You're not crazy, right? They come to everybody. What thoughts need to be considered suspect because they aren't productive and they aren't working for you. And when you engage in them, they don't lead you anywhere that was worth the effort. Just think of yourself instead as investigating with these 3 columns what thoughts need to be considered suspect. All right. Now, when I say thoughts, seem like something that kind of gets played across your brain. They can arrive as well as pictures and images. Okay. Write them down. Write them down. It's just a message. A thought doesn't have to be something like a ticker tape through your head. We think in pictures and images quite often, particularly if our representational system of our world is visual. Apparently, the vast majority of people are visual. That's how they process their environment and the world and their thinking. Okay. But they can also present themselves, these thoughts, as intrusive thoughts. All right. Images and words. Write them down in the thinking column. Thoughts, that thoughts column. And then take a second and ask yourself, what are your thinking errors? Circle them. Because by this time, when you've written them down, at the end of the day, you'll have a little bit more ability to reflect, and you'll see some of the forward movement of the day and how things played out. And that maybe what you thought, what you felt, actually wasn't, it was more about how your mood was. It was more about what you didn't know. All right. And that upon reflection, you've realized that's either not the truth or it's not the whole truth. Quite often, it's not the whole truth. Right. All right. So what you put in your thought column, your thinking column, is a key way, or an absolute key way when you reflect, to become more objective. And we want to be observers of our own process before we commit to it. Okay. So we become more objective about our thoughts. So a thought comes to mind, you go, whoa, wait a minute. I know I feel that. But what is the evidence? Now, it sounds so hokey and it sounds so contrived. It isn't. You put your own words to it. All right. But when a thought comes to mind before you commit to it, when a feeling rushes up, ask yourself, whoa. How true is that? What is the evidence of that? How do I know that that reflects the reality in front of me? All right. And that's a really good way, that 5-second pause, all right, to start targeting and identifying the problems, like the problem children in your thinking errors. And we all have them. And we have more of them depending on how negative our mood is. Because the world isn't sunshine and roses all the time, but neither is it half of the automatic negative thoughts we have. All right. So, are there any fears? Are there any thoughts, any insecurities, any questions or concerns that you are aware of after this presentation today that are common little thoughts that lurk in the back of your mind that are just, you're more susceptible to those jumping forward and kind of presenting themselves. And also creating the worst possible conclusion. That's where catastrophizing. Remember last week we talked about the evil 11 and catastrophizing. I make it so big that it's insurmountable. It feels that way. I know it does, but it's not reflected in reality. Back up, catch your breath, have a look at it, check the evidence. It isn't that much of a catastrophe. All right. Thinking in extreme, all or nothing, black and white is another way to end up with those thinking errors. Am I using words like, how do you find that out? Are you using words like always, never, must, should, ought to? Okay. Now, to draw generalizing conclusions from a very specific event, so a tiny experience, but it becomes the rule of life. You are over generalizing. The principle that you're operating by needs to be in proportion to your experience with it. If you give it credence, all right? Am I predicting the future instead of waiting to see what's going to happen? Why am I doing that? Why am I fortune telling? What is that giving me? Is that an automatic negative thought, a way to handle my fear of I might not be able to handle what I think is going to happen? Am I jumping to conclusions about what other people are thinking of me? Is that a defense mechanism that avoids rejection or judgment? That's called mind reading. Is anybody out there doing any of this? Am I focusing on the negative and overlooking the positive? Am I super critical? Can I always tell you what's wrong with something? That's called mental filtering. I just filter out the positive. Some people do that to show how clever they are. It isn't clever. It's just negative. All right, because at the same time something negative is happening in our environment, there are other things that are happening that are positive as well. They coexist. The negative and positive coexist. That is the balance of life. Life isn't negative. Are you just noticing the negative? Are you just giving credence to the negative? In my book, Conquer the Clutter, I have a little story there, and it's a true one of a time in my life when it was just like, oh, please, Lord, send me something. And I was on my way to somewhere, and I was just, oh, another day. And then I felt really empty, and I looked up the sky, and I said, if there's anybody up there on my side, please send me something to be positive today, to add positive to today, something to get me through. And it sounds so hokey, but it was very, very powerful. It taught me a lesson. I want to pass that opportunity on to you. Okay. And that is that I looked off to the right. It was kind of really early in the morning. I was on my way to work, and not my job I have now. And there was this glorious sunrise. It was beyond belief. And I remember just having a reaction to it and going, whoa, it was amazing. All right. And I know it sounds hokey, but it was very powerful. And you know what? in that moment, I learned something. First of all, there's always somebody or something that is there to support you. You're never alone. Even though you feel alone sometimes, very alone, you're not. All right. That's a little mind filtering you're doing. You're not looking up. And at the same time, in this world, when there are all kinds of negatives happening, look for the positive. It's out there. Are you going to be able to flip and Pollyanna and turn the world into a wonderful, pink, glowing place? No, you're not. But it will sustain you. It will sustain you. Those positives, those little positives that are right out there, free of charge for the wanting and using, it will sustain you until you get your sea legs back again. All right? Until you're feeling yourself again. So are you discounting positive information or twisting positives into negatives? That's called disqualifying the positive. And you know how you do that? You go, yeah, but. Anybody who says, yeah, but, is disqualifying the positive. They recognize there is a positive. They just don't want to inconvenience themselves by having to consider that it's part of the truth as well. Are you globally like putting yourself down as a negative, something negative? What is your word for you when you do that? That's called labeling. Are you listening too much to your negative gut feeling instead of looking for the objective facts that are right out there for the observing? Because that gut feeling, that's just a feeling. That negative is probably your automatic negative bias kicking into gear. It's not a bad thing to have. It's a really bad thing to settle on habitually. All right? It's called emotional reasoning. You feel, you assess and give meaning according to the emotion you're feeling. Emotions pass like the wind. All right? Am I taking an event or someone's behavior too personally? We're not that important, people. We just are not that important. That we are the event, that it's about us, okay? Or are we blaming ourselves and overlooking other factors by personalizing something? All right? Are we using words? How many people out there use should? Should is a shovel, just dig yourself in a hole. All right? Must. There are so few musts in life. Ought is a moralizing. There's a value, there's a belief and a value behind you ought to do that. There are rules, okay? Have to. That's rigid thinking. Watch them. So, are you demanding that you tell yourself something is too difficult or unbearable? Are you telling yourself you can't do something? You can't stand it, all right? You just can't do it. No, it isn't a matter of can't do it. It's a matter of making a choice that you won't do it, which is your right to choose. But that also leaves the possibility, and we're going to close on this, that there's another list of cans. At the moment that you believe and experience that you can't do something, look for the one or two things. Maybe they're small. Look for those and do what you can do. No matter how small, no matter how insignificant it feels, because that is still progress. All right. You are still advancing your progress in what you're trying to do. And just keep doing the small things habitually. and you will get there. I will see you next week. I am looking forward to reading the 47 notes in the chat box. And I wish you a great week. Try it, people. It really will serve you well. Take care.
Can you do it? Yes, you can. Yes, you can.